One of the greatest mysteries in the Bible surrounds the identity of the Nephilim. These mysterious beings are mentioned in Genesis 6 and are often described as giants. According to tradition, the Nephilim were enormous, violent creatures, cannibals even, who were the offspring of fallen angels and human women. They supposedly roamed the earth before being destroyed in the flood that God sent during Noah's time. But who were these Nephilim, and how do we know about them? For over 2 millennia, the Nephilim have been the subject of debate among Christians, Jews, and even non-believers. The confusion begins in Genesis 6 verses 1 to 4, which describes the sons of God taking the daughters of men as wives, resulting in offspring who were described as mighty men or giants. Here's the key passage that starts the controversy. When men began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then the Lord said, "My spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown." Genesis 6 verses 1 to 4. This passage gives rise to many questions. Who were the sons of God? Were they angels? If so, how could angels have physical relations with human women? And how did this lead to God deciding to flood the earth? The Book of Enoch's account. A Jewish text known as the Book of Enoch, written around 200 BC, provides a detailed explanation of this mysterious event. According to Enoch, angelic beings, referred to as the Watchers, descended to earth and took human women as wives, producing a race of giants known as the Nephilim. The Book of Enoch explains that these angels corrupted humanity by teaching them forbidden knowledge such as sorcery, astrology, and even warfare, leading to widespread violence and wickedness on the earth. This led to God's judgment in the form of the flood. Interestingly, while the Book of Enoch is not included in most Bibles today, it was highly regarded in early Jewish and Christian traditions. In fact, Jude, one of the apostles of Jesus, directly quotes from the Book of Enoch in his epistle. It was also about these that Enoch, in the 7th generation from Adam, prophesied, saying, "Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones, to execute judgment on all, and to convict all the ungodly of all their deeds of ungodliness that they have committed in such an ungodly way, and of all the harsh things that ungodly sinners have spoken against him." Jude 1 verses 14 to 15. This quotation is directly from 1 Enoch 1:9, showing that Jude and other early Christians were familiar with and valued the Book of Enoch. Another apostle, Peter, also seems to reference the same tradition when he writes about angels who sinned and were cast into chains of darkness. For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but sent them to hell, putting them in chains of darkness to be held for judgment, if he did not spare the ancient world when he brought the flood on its ungodly people, but protected Noah, a preacher of righteousness, and 7 others, 2 Peter 2 verses 4 to 5. Here, Peter alludes to the angels' rebellion and the resulting flood, which mirrors the story from Enoch. The giants of Genesis and their connection to the flood. One key point in this narrative is the connection between the Nephilim and the flood. According to the Book of Enoch, the union between the angels and human women produced the Nephilim, who were not only giants but also incredibly violent and wicked. Their presence and influence on earth led God to cleanse the world with the flood, saving only Noah and his family. The Book of Wisdom, part of the Old Testament canon in Eastern Orthodox and Catholic Bibles, also links the flood with the destruction of these giants. Wisdom 14:6 states, "And from the beginning also, when the proud giants perished, the hope of the world, fleeing to a vessel which was governed by thy hand, left to the world's seed of generation." The vessel is Noah's Ark, and the proud giants refer to the Nephilim. This passage reinforces the idea that the flood was a divine judgment on the Nephilim and the corrupt world they helped create. the Watchers, and their punishment. The Book of Enoch also provides more details on the fate of the fallen angels, known as the Watchers. After corrupting humanity and fathering the Nephilim, they were punished by God and imprisoned in a place called Tartarus. This concept of Tartarus is borrowed from Greek mythology and refers to the deepest, darkest part of the underworld, a prison for the wicked. Peter also references Tartarus in his writings. For if God did not spare the angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell, Tartarus, and committed them to chains of gloomy darkness to be kept until the judgment, 2 Peter 2 verse 4. The imagery of Tartarus as a place of punishment for fallen angels reinforces the gravity of their sin and its lasting consequences. Different interpretations of the Nephilim. Over time, different interpretations of the Nephilim emerged within both Jewish and Christian traditions. Early church fathers, such as Justin Martyr, Irenaeus, and Clement of Alexandria, held to the traditional view that the Nephilim were the offspring of fallen angels and human women. They saw these beings as literal giants who were wiped out by the flood due to their wickedness. However, a major shift occurred with St. Augustine in the 4th century. In his work, The City of God, Augustine proposed that the sons of God, mentioned in Genesis 6, were not angels but human descendants of Seth, the righteous son of Adam. According to Augustine, these descendants of Seth intermarried with the sinful descendants of Cain, leading to the moral corruption of humanity. This view, known as the Sethite theory, became the dominant interpretation in Western Christianity for centuries. Despite Augustine's influence, the older view persisted in some traditions, especially within Eastern Orthodoxy and in some early Jewish writings. Thomas Aquinas, another influential theologian, also held to the Sethite view but did not have access to the Book of Enoch, which had been lost for centuries. Rediscovery of the Book of Enoch and the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Book of Enoch was largely forgotten for over 1,000 years until it was rediscovered in the 18th century. Its rediscovery, along with the findings of the Dead Sea Scrolls in the mid-20th century, reignited interest in the Nephilim and the story of the Watchers. Among the Dead Sea Scrolls were several copies of a text known as the Book of Giants, which provided even more details about the Nephilim and their destruction. These texts suggest that the story of the Nephilim was an important part of Jewish thought during the Second Temple period, from the rebuilding of the temple after the Babylonian exile to the time of Jesus. During this time, Jewish writers were influenced by surrounding cultures, including the Greeks, and the fusion of these influences may have shaped the development of stories like that of the Watchers and the Nephilim. Modern interpretations and theories. Today, scholars and theologians continue to debate the meaning and significance of the Nephilim. Some, like Michael Heiser, emphasize a literal reading of Genesis 6, arguing that the Nephilim were indeed a hybrid race of angelic and human origin. Heiser's work focuses on the idea of a divine council, where God rules alongside a group of angelic beings, some of whom rebelled and produced the Nephilim. Others, such as Margaret Barker, take a more symbolic approach, seeing the Nephilim as a representation of the wickedness and violence of humanity before the flood. Barker suggests that the story of the Nephilim is an allegory for human sinfulness and the need for divine intervention. Secular scholars and skeptics often view the Nephilim as part of an ancient mythological tradition. They propose that the story of the Nephilim may reflect ancient memories of a time when humans encountered large or unusual beings, possibly even early human ancestors like Neanderthals, whose existence and origins remain a mystery. Theological significance. For Christians, the story of the Nephilim raises important theological questions. What does it mean for angels to rebel against God? Can they really interact with humanity in such a physical way? And how do these ancient stories influence our understanding of God's judgment, especially as seen in the flood narrative? The Catholic Church has largely adopted the Augustinian interpretation, viewing the sons of God in Genesis 6 as human beings rather than angels. However, the rediscovery of the Book of Enoch and its widespread acceptance in early Christian writings, such as those by Jude and Peter, suggests that the older interpretation of the Nephilim as angelic offspring was once a common belief. In conclusion, the Nephilim remain one of the most intriguing and mysterious figures in the Bible. While we may never fully understand their origins or significance, their presence in the biblical narrative reminds us of the tension between heaven and earth, between divine beings and humanity. Whether viewed as literal giants or as symbolic representations of human sinfulness, the Nephilim challenge us to reflect on the nature of God's judgment, the rebellion of spiritual beings, and the consequences of human wickedness.